Thank you for joining us to learn more about Arts Etobicoke's data project. We wanted to share with you how we've worked through collecting, analyzing, and visualizing data. We are here to talk about our 5-year data project. What worked, what didn't work, how we got here, and where we ended up. When we started, we had no idea what data was. And in the last 5 years, organizations have developed much more data literacy, at least to understand what data they have and how they're collecting it. But at that time, we did not know. We knew that we were an arts organization, and we wanted to approach this like an arts organization, which meant we didn't really want to just walk around with iPads and surveys. So we hired 2 artists to work on our team, Eleanor Whidden and Maggie Hutchison, from the Artist Collective Department of Public Memory. And we have a video with them, and I really encourage you to go listen to it. They are very good at telling stories in a sensitive, reflective, community-centered way. And we also brought on Surface Impression because we desperately needed someone that knew something about data collection. And again, please go watch Peter's video on data, which is also included. So we knew we wanted data to help us solve a problem. We wanted to connect with a community who we didn't know and who didn't know us, and find out what they wanted to do for arts and culture, because we wanted to better support and foster that need as a community-focused organization. And we identified that location was important because we were delivering programs in local communities, and we couldn't assume that what worked here was going to work over here. We also wanted to track trends. What is bubbling up where, and can we track that? We eventually asked for age. We wanted to know what the youth were into versus the seniors in the same community. But I pointed out here because data sets can grow and build, and don't wait for it to be perfect to start. We had 3 questions that we wanted to ask. And this is what we wanted to better understand, and we found many, many different ways of asking these questions. We wanted to know, what do you do for arts and culture? What do you want to do more of? And how can Arts Etobicoke play a role in this? In the grant, we said we would collect data, analyze data, and visualize data. And the grant really helped us stay focused and committed to data collection. And of course, it provided us with the funds to do it. It took us 5 years to go through each of these phases. And at this point in our data literacy, we know that these are small iterative circles, not one big 5-year circle. We got stuck a little bit in data collection because it was fun and easy. But we're here to also talk about analysts or analyzing data and visualizing data, because you'll want to understand these 2 pieces in parallel to your data collection. The sooner you get to visualization, the sooner you're going to see how data is going to work for you, and therefore the more likely you are to continue, and the faster you're going to get buy-in from staff, board, and community. Also, the faster you're going to understand what else you need to fill in the gaps. This was our first visualization, which we simply mapped our participants by postal code. This map was not hard to create, and we were really surprised to learn our reach. We showed this to our main funder to demonstrate that our reach extends beyond Etobicoke and even beyond the borders of Toronto, and it was a really easy story to show. So moving into data collection. Some things we learned: not all data needs to be collected, and we were not starting from scratch, and neither are you. Some data already exists. Use StatsCan data if you're in Canada, for example. It may not tell you exactly who came to your program, but it should be enough to inform your funder. And this saves you from burdening your community with demographic questions. We have a document about ethics and data collection, which is really important to review. We also had registration forms, donor information, social media analytics, which could inform a lot about who are attending our programs and what our current audiences were interested in. Your process will need to include assessing what you already have. But we also wanted to learn about needs and interests from people who we don't know and who don't know us. So we had to physically go out and meet with and talk with and spend time with our community. We also wanted to know the different needs and interests in different locations in Etobicoke. We want to be able to segment our data and learn the unique needs within communities. And eventually, we learned that we also want to learn the differences between age groups. We hired story coordinators, and we have 2 wonderful videos from 2 of our story coordinators about their experiences, which you should go listen to. So these people were the best positioned to ask the community questions. They were different ages, they spoke 9 different languages among 7 of them, and they had different experiences and different backgrounds. And they were all incredibly interested in connecting with people. We wanted people to feel comfortable talking to community members, but also people who others felt comfortable talking to. We trained them, we reinforced communication and interview skills, but really it was just building a bit of confidence. We went to a lot of festivals and events, and the story coordinators were very good at getting into a lot of in-depth information, like conducting interviews. And again, go listen to Pearl and Rayesh's videos. We learned that people wanted to talk and share their ideas, and the story coordinators were really wonderful people to help us do this. But we also found ourselves at festivals of like 500 people. So we also needed really quick data collection methods that weren't as involved as interviews. And some of the things we learned through this is give people something if you're looking to get something, even a little pin. This will make things a lot easier. Prompts are very helpful to get people thinking. We learned that some ideas didn't work, but it kept us asking in new ways. And we found that different methods or questions work differently in different communities. For us, it was always about finding ways to get postal codes or locational information, and we used things like jars to do that. We learned that we could analyze right on the spot, that all data didn't need to go into spreadsheets, that we could learn a lot just from reading what was written in front of us. We also learned that craft paper, colored markers, jars, these are very approachable methods, and they were very effective. So polished approaches aren't always the best. One of the problems we found is getting into that deeper information, digging into what people take for granted as their arts and cultural activities, for example, or another problem, getting past what people think you want to hear in an interview, in a survey. So what we did was initiate a conversation over here that helped us open a door to get us over here. So in this case, we were asking people to talk about objects of cultural significance, to get to a place where we could learn about culturally significant art forms.
So I'm going to talk about some of our learnings from our process of analyzing and visualizing our data, and share an example of how analyzing our data helps shape one of our programs here at Arts Etobicoke. It's really at this stage that we were able to understand and share the stories and data that we'd collected. Over time, with analysis, we could see patterns and trends emerge as we were able to compare data collected from different events at different times or at different locations across Etobicoke. As a result, we were able to get a much deeper understanding of the information we were working with, and more importantly, share those findings back with our community. I also think it's important to mention that data analysis and visualization can be pretty intimidating. As Wendy mentioned, we found it tricky as an arts organization to make the jump from just collecting data to analyzing it. And as we ran workshops with other arts organizations, we consistently heard that a lot of folks are much more confident collecting data, but less confident when it comes to analysis and visualization. It might take some playing around to find what works best for you. We focused on keeping this process as simple and streamlined as possible by using free tools such as Google Sheets and Looker Studio, and automating the process when it was possible. We've also continued to explore different techniques to visualize our data as the tools available have changed over the last 5 years. If this data analysis and visualization process is something you're looking to learn more about, we've created a couple of short tutorials and resources, and have also collected a list of the many incredible resources that can support your learning. I'm now going to take us through an example of how our data analysis and visualization process shaped our programming. This is a sample of a screenshot of our Google Sheets where almost all of our data is stored. And that Google Sheet is connected directly to this Looker Studio dashboard. When we input data into the Google Sheet, it automatically updates here, allowing us to instantly understand and share our learnings from the data. This is an example of our data collection from 2020 to 2021, showing where we collected data in those years. At that time, we were heavily focused on collecting data from folks in central Etobicoke. This is the same visualization, but showing the data that we collected in the years of 2022 and 2023. As you can see, we've significantly shifted our data collection to collect more data from folks in North Etobicoke. It was important to us to collect this data before we actually started to deliver programming. We knew from census data that there were big differences between Central and North Etobicoke. For example, North Etobicoke has a much lower average income than other areas in Etobicoke and a much higher percentage of new Canadians. As we were developing this programming, we needed to understand what folks were interested in, and specifically how those interests differed between Central and North Etobicoke. This is a visualization that shows the top 5 interests that folks in Etobicoke were interested in. You can see at the top that music remains a strong interest across Etobicoke. However, we wanted to dig deeper into North Etobicoke and understand what interests were popular there as well. This is data collected in the summer of 2023 and shows that music continues to be a strong interest in North Etobicoke. However, we can't just deliver programming based on an interest in music. It's important to understand more specifically what types of music, how folks want to participate, or if they want to get up on stage and perform, or if they'd prefer to sit and listen. In this visualization, I'd like to direct your attention to the presence of drumming and percussive instruments in here. We see this take place in multiple forms. Aside from a strong interest in music and music concerts, we see drums, we see African drumming alongside various other different types of percussion. One of our programmers took a look at this visualization, noted this interest, and then developed this after-school program in North Etobicoke that allowed children to explore their interest in drumming. Once we got to this point of analyzing and visualizing our data, it was also important to kind of share the findings that we learned back with the community. So on the right-hand side of this slide, you can see a poster that we created to share our learnings back with community. This helped us to share the data that we'd been collecting over the past couple of years, but also served as a way for folks to connect and understand and share their own ideas with the project. For some people, they disagreed with the fact that music should be something that we focused on, and therefore were prompted to fill out a survey or any other kind of data collection methods and participate themselves. And as an arts organization, it was important to us to not only visualize this data using graphs and charts, but also to analyze it more creatively. We hired 5 artists working in 5 different mediums, including textiles, photography, and sculpture, who reviewed our data to create 5 different works, resulting in the Beyond the Bar Graph exhibit. Having 5 different artists working from a diversity of perspectives not only resulted in them finding different patterns and trends than we'd found, but also gave community members a different way to understand and engage with our project.
We're going to share with you some learnings that we've found over our time working through this project. Remain community focused. This work needs to come from how is this serving your community? From designing the questions to who is asking the questions. Why are you asking demographic questions, for example? Will this better serve your community? We hired story coordinators because they are the best positioned to talk with the community. Can you include those roles in a grant? Do you have the right volunteers who can do this? Think about those with the same language, lived experience, and backgrounds as those who you're looking to connect with. This will have lower barriers for those wanting to connect with you. Learn from the data that you are collecting. Not all data needs to end up in a graph, and often it doesn't. Talk about what you're learning as you collect it. What is written down on the paper? Talk about it at staff meetings. This is where you can discover some really important learnings. Continually share your learnings with your community. Share with your community what you are learning from their responses. In fact, it belongs to them. And share it with your staff, board, and volunteers. The more you talk about it, the more the information becomes useful and integrated into your everyday organizational practices. Remember that not all data needs to be collected. We think about trying not to burden our community with too many questions. Less is better, especially if you're still building that trust with the community. Marginalized communities are often over-asked social identifying demographic information, and we need to carefully understand why we're asking those questions. Continue to reevaluate and self-reflect. This is an iterative process. We don't walk through it in a straight line. It's necessary to keep going back to the start. What data do you already have? Who are you not connecting with? Are we asking the right questions? And how can we ask those questions differently? And also seek help if you need it. some analysis and visualization could benefit from external skills and perspectives. Stay focused on what you want to learn, but be flexible in how you ask. Different methods and questions are going to work differently in different communities and in different situations. And use your strengths to keep the process fun and creative. We are arts organizations. Our superpower is our creativity. Data can be fun, and the more fun and creative we make it, the more likely people will engage. And that includes your staff, who will have more fun collecting it, your community, who's going to have more fun providing it, and everyone else who's going to be more interested in learning about it. And finally, to wrap up, thank you for joining this presentation. In reflection, my personal journey through learning and embracing data has felt very empowering. It takes time to integrate these practices into an organization, and it wasn't always easy, but it has been really worth the effort. It has been worth the conversations we've had around approaching communities with respect and reciprocity. It has been interesting to learn about the communities and how these learnings have informed our programming and strategic decisions. And I have learned practical skills that help me better communicate our impact, reach, and value, which has certainly made my job easier. So good luck with your data journey, and reach out if you have any questions.